Hello and welcome to Fresh Faced Comics, the comic book podcast where a lifelong comic book reader guides his friend through the world of comics for the first time. My name is Joey Morgan, the aforementioned lifelong reader. With me, as always, is Jacob Licklider, the aforementioned newbie.
I'm just gonna rest here for a little while with my friend.
You bastard. Oh, I'm so excited for today's episode of Fresh Faced Comics, the last episode of the year. Today we are talking about Scott
Yes!
Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman Endgame. Wow, I'm excited. I didn't realize how excited I was for this until we started recording.
I know I have thoughts and ideas, and
there's plenty of room for those thoughts and ideas.
it's gonna be really hard for any other Batman run to come close to Snyder's run.
That is fair. That is
like
fair. I did give all the others a pretty unfair advantage starting you on Snyder, didn't I?
yes,
Yeah.
you did, but also it's kind of the perfect place to start. You wouldn't I wouldn't say necessarily just start with the Tom King run.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, you could. You could.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, you could start with Grant Morrison. You could start if you wanted to start with Bob Kane. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could.
Well. Bill Finger's at least a decent writer.
That is true.
Even if Bob Kane art doesn't work nicely.
Bob
unless
Kane
it's
art
being inked by the right inkers.
Yeah. But yeah, we're talking about Endgame today. This is the second to last actual Scott Snyder arc in his Batman run. But before we get into today's episode, I just want to thank you all so much for listening to the podcast. This is the last episode coming out this year. That being said, we have 3 episodes coming out in January, episodes 32 through 34. And again, as always, it's every other Monday. If you're just joining us this episode, I'm Joey. I've been reading comics all my life. Jacob has not, and we've been doing this podcast for a little over a year now.
Yes.
And it's been great fun. Seriously, go listen to past episodes if you haven't, or if you're just here for the Scott Snyder stuff. We have covered the whole Scott Snyder run up to this point. So
we will be discussing probably a little bit of Graveyard Shift.
Yeah, because you did read that
here.
Personally,
I did read it.
And also just for those listening that are wondering why we didn't talk about Graveyard Shift at all and it didn't get its own episode, I don't feel it's necessary to the run. It is not its own story. It's an anthology release, and
there are a couple of issues I'd argue are important. But also so many of those issues are tie-ins to other things.
Yeah, and it would be kind of pointless because I chose to go straight from 0 Year to this and not take 3 extra episodes for Batman Eternal.
I'd like to do Eternal someday.
We can do Eternal someday. I don't think it's essential for this. I feel like anything that was changed by Eternal, you were able to catch up on easily in this, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And it's nothing major, actually. It's 2-3 things that have changed about the general Batman setup, and
a couple of things.
One of them didn't actually happen in Eternal, so
yeah, and then because other things were happening in the DC universe at the time.
Yeah,
I will say basically the essential stuff from Graveyard Shift, at least in my mind, for the most part, is that second annual.
Yeah, but that's all stuff falling out from Morrison killing off Damian.
That, but also just anything with Harper Row.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if for nothing else, just Harper Row content because she's the best.
Yes, she's the.
Yeah, and also I guess Eric Border, sort of.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I was bringing up the annual because that's where he first shows up.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that until just now. Because I did not.
I also read the third annual that isn't included in the collection.
I feel like it kind of should be just because it's a Joker-centric story, and this is the only other Joker-centric Snyder arc.
Well, it should be, and I read it after reading the second issue of Endgame. Just because I was like, oh right, I want to read that, and it honestly perfectly slots in right there.
Oh, seriously?
With what's happening?
Huh.
Yeah.
I have not tried that reading order. All right, then.
Accidentally reading something in a perfect order.
Dude, I'm getting all the tie-ins and things to Millennium. I think I told you about this. And there are 2 unofficial tie-ins to it from Swamp Thing, and there is no consensus online or no one even talking about where they slot in. So I have no clue where to put them when I do actually read it. I don't know.
Would that have still been Alan Moore on that book?
No, actually, oddly enough, there are the 2 issues of Swamp Thing immediately after Moore left.
So Moore leaves. And then
and then they're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna do some crazy crossover shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Batman Endgame.
Batman Endgame. So, as someone that had not, how much did you know about this going in? And then, secondly, what is the story about?
So going in, I was originally under the preconception that this was the last Scott Snyder thing.
Oh,
Like,
really?
yeah, like I just never heard of Super Heavy. And I just thought, oh, it ends at volume 7, I guess.
No, it does not.
It doesn't, but it easily could, just based on reading it. Like
Hmm.
it's really interesting. And then I knew that the Joker was in it and that it was the follow up to Death of the Family. Like,
Hmm. And then, obviously, given the cover, some things have changed with the Joker since Death of the Family.
yes,
Namely, he has gained a face.
he is gained a face. Um,
And I just love that cover, him stretching out the old face. Just, oh, it's so good.
yes,
So, so
it's
good.
very gruesome. But yeah, what's interesting though is I was expecting this. I don't know if I was expecting nearly as much continuity from Death of the Family.
Mm.
Like I thought it would be completely separate, but no, this really is like,
Oh, it's the follow-up to Death of the Family.
yeah,
Like,
like this is part two.
If Death of the Family is the Batman Joker love story, Endgame is the fallout from them breaking up.
Yes,
Like that's how I sort of always saw it, you know?
I mean it's quite interesting. Because throughout reading this, I was surprised by a lot of sort of the references and homages to just to a lot of things that Snyder packs into these 6 issues.
Hmm.
Um,
I mean, even from just reading Death of the Family, like we know Snyder can pack a lot into a small amount of issues.
yeah, but like this is specifically like a lot of this is Snyder tributing a lot of classic horror films,
Hmm.
in a lot of interesting ways, as well as tribute, as kind of sending up certain pieces of Greek myth, um, especially in the way that it opens.
As someone that's not familiar with that stuff, I'll be really curious to hear what you have to say about that. Because I mean, I obviously, it's all meant to be like symbolic, but like I didn't know what a lot of it meant, I guess. So I'll be curious to hear what
Yeah.
you have to say about
Well,
that.
so just in the structure of Death of the Family and Endgame, if you pluck those two volumes, they actually kind of follow a sort of tragic Greek format. Death of the Family sort of being your end of the first half, where our Greek hero in Batman is triumphant. Um, Specifically, oddly enough, because you said this is a love story, um, odd parallels to the Greek figure Medea, who is a sorceress, who famously marries Jason and helps him find the Golden Fleece, marries him, then she kills him and her children in a tragic rage because Jason's a dick, and is terrible, um, and ends up becoming the villain of the piece,
Hmm.
and basically ends up being kind of triumphant in the end. Not entirely unlike what happens in Endgame, and it's I don't know if that was intentional.
Hmm. I mean, probably. Snyder seems very knowledgeable in those kind of things. Like I would be very surprised if it wasn't intentional. But that being said, I think it's time to start going into our Twitter questions because we're
Yes.
sort of already talking about the topics that were brought up in our Twitter questions today. So first off, our friend Jamie at Jamie_season 7 says this is after Batman Eternal, right? Does reading that add anything to it? So from my perspective, not much. I mean, I first read Endgame without having read Eternal. And I have read all of Eternal since, and honestly, it doesn't do too much aside from just a few structure changes. Namely, Julia Pennyworth, Alfred's daughter, is now helping out the Bat family. Some things have changed with Nightwing, and oh, Harper Row is like a full-on vigilante now, actually, and that's about it, you know. But that's nothing that like the book won't catch you up on very easily, you know.
So yeah, well, I think it probably adds context, like
Yeah, yeah,
at
but
least probably
also
some really good context,
yeah, and
and
also
probably
just
a bit more just in universe story difference from.
Eternal is also 52 issues long, and it does feel like you just shoved an entire extra era of DC Comics in the middle of it all. So I don't think it really works as a complete part of the Snyder run. Um, So if, in a Snyder reread, I would never personally throw an Eternal into it. But that's just me, you know. I mean, you
That
can.
that's interesting because I think it's just to sort of, I mean, pull it apart. And it'll be interesting eventually when we read Eternal to have the context there, but also because I think Eternal might hopefully stands on its own story. Because what's really just really interesting is that there really isn't a lot of distance considering the Snyder one went from Death of the Family to Zero Year, and while
Mhm.
Zero Year is 12 issues of distance, you don't feel that distance because we are in the past and not in the present.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So if you're reading them, if you threw like Zero Year first in your reading because it takes place first, then you'd be going straight from Death of the Family to Endgame,
yeah.
um,
Um,
which would be interesting. I've never personally done that. I've always done like Zero Year where it was published. But
yes.
anyway, our next Twitter question comes from English Giraffe at English_giraffe. Says, "Do you think that this should have been Scott's last Batman story instead of Super Heavy and Epilogue? I personally love those stories, especially with how Endgame ends. Asking from both perspectives, Joey who reads them and Jacob who's just experienced this for now." I want to hear your opinion on this first.
I think it's a beautiful ending.
Hmm.
Um, I know that it can't be the ending because comics always have to go back to some sort of status quo.
Yeah.
Bruce, which kind of a shame, but like this is a really good ending.
Hmm.
As well as
I
especially considering like from what I know about Super Heavy is that that can be its own thing. Like
It could be. I think in the way that Bruce is utilized in Super Heavy, which you'll see eventually, I think it's an even more perfect ending to the Snyder stuff, but you will see.
we'll see.
Without giving away too much, what Snyder does with Super Heavy is, you know, obviously, as you know, he does the status quo reset as any comic should do in killing off a character and bringing them back and whatever. Um, but when it comes to this, Snyder establishes why for how this ends and how Super Heavy ends, why that status quo reset for certain characters, especially big characters like Batman, is necessary and why it can really work. But more on
See,
that later.
yeah, I can't I can imagine that working. But like I don't know, this feels like an ending.
Hmm.
Like because it feels like everything's brought together. Also, we didn't bring it up in the graveyard shift discussion, but in that you also get the zero issue of Batman, and
Yeah, which like contradicts a lot of Zero Year stuff.
it's a very nice issue.
Yeah, but it was also written like a whole year before Zero Year was written.
I'm very
So
glad it's there because the backup is like brilliant.
yeah,
And
the backup's great. Yeah, I like that a lot.
yeah,
Um, anyway, next up, our friend Kellogg at underscore Kellogg says, "I remember this being pretty cool. Maybe I'll reread it. Thoughts on the Joker haircut?" um, I mean, I like the Joker haircut. It looks especially malicious in this case. It looks like it's very fresh and new as Joker is meant to look throughout this. You know, like he is reborn.
yes, I think it's kind of funny because if you take the idea of Joker being Batman's ex, it's an ex drastically shaving their hair in a fit of rage.
I
Um,
love that.
because
um,
like honestly, a lot of this framing is just the Joker being pissed that his ex broke up with him.
yeah, yeah. And then lastly, our friend Mason didn't respond on the actual tweets today, but he DM'd his questions to us today. Mason says, one, how does this stack up to Death of the Family? So you could say now, do you think it's better or worse?
I think it's slightly okay. Here's the thing: there hasn't been a volume of Scott Snyder's run that hasn't been a 10 out of 10. Like it's so like I think ever so slightly Endgame edges it out, mainly because it feels like a second. It makes it extend and feel like the second half of a story that ends. Um,
That's fair. I get
which I
that.
know
I think
you.
I prefer Death of the Family myself for the fact that for if for nothing else, I just love the fact that it's more of a horror story. It's just more my style in general. But I mean I adore both of them, obviously. So
Yes.
yeah. His second question is, what is the most gruesome scene in the comic?
So this, oddly enough, this one isn't as outright gruesome as Death of the Family. Like there isn't, say, the dinner scene.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a scene in issue 2, um, where the Joker is disguised as someone, and that
Oh my God,
reveal
yeah.
made my stomach turn.
As it should.
Um,
Yeah. Ooh, man. Oh, it's like my favorite scene in the comic. I love that one. And then three, Mason says, "How does this relate to Avengers Endgame? It's better than it.
well, it does also has a bunch of superheroes in it
That's
fighting
true. That's true. There's, yeah.
a threat much bigger than themselves,
Hmm.
possibly.
Yeah.
If you take some hints about who the Joker may or may not actually be or represent to into account.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's oh yeah, and it's better. It's better than Endgame, and I
It is.
quite like Endgame.
Endgame's a good film. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess that about does it for non-spoilers, right? Should we
Yeah, just
delve?
just I mean just a couple of minor things, I guess, before we move into spoilers. First, if you would like to see what we cover next time on the podcast, skip to the end of the episode. I have, for once in a long while, have no idea.
Yeah, like you are
Like
completely lost on this
I am
next
I am
one.
throwing darts at a board, and most of them have missed. Joey has told me like they have missed. Um,
Yes.
if you like what we do, give yeah, as always, give us a follow. Um,
All our Twitters will be linked in the description below. You can check those
uh,
out. We're also
chat with us if you agree with us. If you disagree with us, go to the YouTube link of this and comment there. That'd be great.
indeed.
Uh,
Also, we'll leave the books that we're covering in this episode and the next episode linked through Amazon links in the description. So if you want to go buy those for yourself, get reading, join in on the discussion. It's always appreciated. So it's always there.
yes, yes.
And also just pick up this book. It's great.
It's 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 really
It's really
good.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, pick up the entire Snyder run if you haven't read Batman. This is
it is collected into omnibus volumes, so
yes,
you have no excuse. There are multiple ways to get it. So yeah. Um,
yes.
all right, I guess that about does it. Let's get into our spoiler section for Batman Endgame by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. We start off in Batman number 35.
Five. And okay, already I was like, oh, the Justice League are in this.
Yeah, yeah, the cover does. Well, first off, the cover's a little misleading because like two of the characters featured here don't even show up. Um, but anyway,
Anyway, yes,
but yeah, so you didn't know the Justice League was involved at all?
I didn't.
Interesting.
So was this? I'm curious. Was this like the other Snyder stuff? Did like other series then get like tie-in issues?
So interestingly, it's a little different from how the other big Snyder crossover events were done. Instead of it crossed over with there was a series at the time called Gotham. Was it Gotham Academy? Gotham Academy, Arkham Manor, and oh god, Batgirl, and a couple others. But instead of getting like tie-in issues, they got like individual one shots. So there was like Batgirl Endgame number one. There
You know,
was Arkham Manor Endgame number one. So they released like completely separate issues from the main series and had those tie in.
that's kind of a nice way of doing it. So you don't
Yeah,
necessarily
yeah. I
disrupt
like
like
that.
whatever the writers of the other series are doing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Though I do think most of those same writers did write for it.
ah,
Also, I'm pretty sure I'm mistaken. I don't think Gotham Academy was a thing at the time. I think I may be
well,
way off with that.
you may well.
Um,
There were tie-ins that were one shots instead of
yes, yeah.
issues. Um,
Anyway, but yeah, so yeah, Justice League is in this, and we open on what Snyder loves to do at the start of every single one of his Batman arcs, which is just start off with a big ass Bruce Wayne monologue that foreshadows a bunch of shit.
yes,
And it's great. So
it's
tell us
great.
about this monologue, Jacob.
So this monologue is set around the Gotham Theater. Very nicely and very quickly continuing the theme of Bruce Wayne actually helping the city financially. and restoring it. Um, and what's referenced is that um, the Gotham Theater basically got some money to put on a production of Orestes or the Oresteia, which is an ancient Greek play, ancient Greek tragedy. Essentially, that is where we get, oddly enough, some myths that Joey you are familiar with. This is where you have the Furies mainly.
Oh,
Is
okay.
is this play hunting down someone who is wronged? It's where we also get the character of Electra. So an Electra complex to that Freud would use for the Oedipus complex. But importantly, it's about a man who kills his mother after she kills his father, and essentially then has to spend the rest of the play running from the Furies until the gods eventually intervene, and the conclusion ends in a rather outdated conclusion of implying that the true right of parentage to one's child is the father and not the mother. Um, there's a lot of implications with that. We don't need to go into it.
Yeah.
But what's important is that one, there's the idea of the Deus ex machina, sort of the god from the machine coming down from on high to set everything right.
Mhm.
Um, and what's interesting is the theater has strung up this intricate piece of armor to sort of serve as the armor of Apollo, who swoops in and saves the day in the Oresteia. And that really sets, at least for me, set the tone of, oh shit, this is going to end badly.
Yeah.
Like,
Um, yeah.
uh,
Uh, and I love the framing device here of saying that, like, the theater's putting on this production, they've overspent a bunch on this harness specifically, and Bruce asked the person that built it, why they're spending so much on it, talking about how the play ends in a Deus Ex Machina where they need to where this a piece of this harness like needs to come in. And according to Bruce, what this person says back to him, he says, "Bruce," he said, "after all we've been through, I just want that to feel real. I want everyone in the theater to believe in that God coming down to help. I just want them to feel saved." And Bruce says, "And in the end, what could I say to that?" Um, and it sets the tone immediately. And then we
yes.
go into this big scene where a big gas bomb has been like let off in the middle of the city, but it is completely harmless, and we learn that. And it has pretty much just been set off to drive people out of the city, basically. And we see Bruce come out in this giant metal bat suit. It's great. This is what the second one of these that Snyder has done,
This is
and
the second one, yeah.
it's pretty ridiculous, and I love it. But yeah, so then we go to what is it?
Our title page.
Yes, our title page. But interestingly, we go back to 29 minutes ago. As Bruce is waking up from a horrible nightmare where the city is in ruins. He's fighting next to his closest friends, and
He
Alfred
fall.
is wearing an eye patch, and it's this apocalyptic future. And Bruce wakes up from that, and
Is
Alfred
that
is there.
apocalyptic future like also supposed to be a reference to something that DC was doing at the time, would be doing at the time? Or
No. At the time,
no?
the only big event going on was Endgame. Not Endgame. The Convergence. And
Ah,
Convergence wasn't really like that. Convergence was a big multi-dimensional thing. So no.
so
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So
I think
we
this is
do.
meant to more look like the end of this book.
Yeah, I mean that's very probable. Though it plays out very differently and much more
Yeah.
interestingly.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, so we find um,
He wakes up. Alfred is there, and we meet Julia Pennyworth.
but
Or you're
first
meeting
we
Julia
find out that
Pennyworth.
this dream was once again fear toxin
Yes.
induced. Um, uh,
Isn't as always.
And what's interesting to notice that they call it the Cassandra strain, which is another reference to Greek myth, the prophet of Troy, who was not believed, and when who was cursed to have only true prophecies, but to never be believed. So she was there when Troy fell, and murdered in the sacking of Troy. Another sort of piece of not so subtle foreshadowing of this is going to go to hell. Uh,
And talking, speaking of things going to hell, we get some nice little like witty banter here between Bruce, Alfred, and Julia, which ultimately leads to a conversation of Bruce and Alfred talking about like joking about who's going to die sooner, and who, it's a jokey conversation, and Julia cuts them off and says like, "You'll both live forever." And tell me what the hell is that? But I just think it's interesting that they're talking, both Bruce and Alfred are talking about their own demise. Um,
yeah, very, very nice humor. Also, they both laugh, um,
mhm.
which
It's just nice to see Bruce Wayne with a smile on his face.
yeah, Bruce Wayne with a smile. But also, Julie is kind of an interesting character because I didn't quite know what to expect.
Mm.
She's not a character.
She's great. I love Julia. I wish more writers would use her because she's great.
Yeah, I like her as a sometimes member of the Bat family.
Hmm.
I like that she's based somewhere else,
Hmm.
and that but then can pop in from time to time, um, because sometimes you just need a character like that. And I
Yeah,
really like
yeah.
the role she plays here, um, partially because this is the first Scott Snyder arc where Bruce really hasn't isolated himself from his
Hmm.
family. Like
Yeah, yeah.
like this time
In
he
fact,
was
later on in the story, like he'll be like actively seeking out members of the Bat family.
yeah.
You know. But this all gets cut off when one Diana Prince comes crashing through the window, smashing into Bruce and slamming him into the ground and taking him outside and really beating on him. It's an interesting setup. What did you initially like make of like what this was like the work of? Like did you have any suspicions other than
I
Joker?
No, mine was like, well, so my initial suspicion was that the gas that was set off wasn't harmless. It was going to be some sort of Joker toxin,
Mm,
but
okay.
like probably like a strain that would maybe only affect the Justice League
Mm,
somehow, or like metahumans somehow, just
hmm.
because, just because like it's like you have that cover of the Justice League fighting Batman,
Hmm.
and um, and then you have Wonder Woman being so aggressive, which okay, I will
If
say.
I remember correctly, because I vaguely remember the release of these issues, though I wasn't reading it as it was coming out, but I remember the covers coming out. I think the fact that Joker was involved in any of this was meant to be a big secret
Really?
because the story was called Endgame. It didn't lead to any Joker suspicions. Even the second cover that you see after this, because usually comic covers are revealed like 2 3 months ahead of time.
Yeah.
The next cover is just an evil Superman. So if all you were building up was the fact that oh Justice League fighting Bruce, evil Superman on this next cover, you're not necessarily going to get any like Joker suspicions, are you?
Right.
So yes, I think if I remember right, I think it was meant to be a big secret. So there weren't any clues when this issue first came out as to like what was causing any of this.
And that's really effective marketing.
Mhm.
Like,
Oh yeah, again, I may be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was released.
especially since, the title Endgame could mean a lot of things.
Yeah, and then
Uh,
you paint it up as this big like Batman versus Justice League story. It could be the Endgame. But what Batman Endgame story would be complete without the Joker? Um,
yes.
so I just love that idea. Yeah, that like it could just be a totally normal Justice League brainwash story. And I like that here. Also, Greg Capullo gets to draw the Justice League here, and they look so fucking great.
He really, really makes the Jim Lee designs just work so well.
Yeah, I mean, not that Jim Lee doesn't make his own designs work well,
No, but
but
like
like Diana in
his
particular here, I love the way Capullo draws her. She looks so great.
yes.
Really
I
great
will
stuff.
say after because so if you're listening to these episodes out of order, the last episode we did was The Dark Knight Strikes Again,
Yes,
and
so so
reading this and
to launch
having
out of that to go into Greg Capullo artwork
is
is
great, but also characterization where basically the first thing Bruce does when he's attacked by Diana is ask, will you just talk to me? Like,
yeah,
yes,
where it's not
yes,
just Bruce
communicate
putting
with
on
your
some.
friends.
Well, interestingly, I was just gonna say it's not Bruce just putting on some giant metal gloves and fighting these guys, but that's what he does.
Yeah,
He
but
puts
but
on
he
a
doesn't
giant metal
initially
suit.
do that. He's
Yeah.
yeah.
There's
Um,
there's a great line without saying too much because I do want you to read it someday. There's a great line from the Injustice comic where Bruce like comes face to face with Superman and they're about to square off. And Superman wants to fight him and Batman goes like that's what you'd want, isn't it? Like for me to put on a big metal suit and fight you, like that I'm not going to give you that satisfaction. Um I don't know, I just think about that here. It's interesting. Anyway,
yes.
Yeah, so we start like flashing back and forth here between like what is now and like what is like 29 minutes ago, or I guess more accurately now, like probably like 25, maybe 20
Yes.
minutes ago.
Also, I should say this plan, this particular, is dubbed Fenrir, which is another sort of apocalyptic reference, this time of Norse mythology.
Huh.
Yeah, of the great wolf that ate the world tree. Also, for the Doctor Who reference, yes, that's where we get Curse of Fenric.
Ah, I did not know that.
Yes.
Hmm.
You no, this book is perfect for me as just like
I,
an
I I I
ancient
fucking
literature
knew that. I
nerd.
fucking knew that going in, and I was still pissed off that you liked it more than Death of the Family.
Look, this book feels almost tailor-made to my sensibilities perfectly.
And it's Scott Snyder, no less. Like,
Yes, yes. The man has talent.
the fact that you've said his run is perfect so far, you know,
Well, okay, the only
certainly
thing that isn't
helps that.
perfect is Graveyard Shift, and that's only because like it's an anthology,
Yeah, he
and
had to
it's
work with a bunch of other writers on that, and it wasn't the regular Capullo team. I think Capullo only does like what 3 issues in that whole
three
collection.
issues, and even then, it's not like it's bad. It's still
Oh
great.
yeah, yeah, but
Like
like but at this point, when we've read 5 volumes of this thing, Snyder and Capullo feel synonymous with each other, you know?
yes,
But anyway, yeah, so we get this fight here between Batman and Wonder Woman, um, and flashing back and forth. What is this little monologue here?
which one? The one about that she's trying that she's not pulling her punches, so you can't either. That she's trying to kill
No,
him.
I was looking at the one afterwards.
Ah,
It says that she's a warrior of truth, so the only way to beat her is with a lie. The relic is called the bind of veils, and it was woven by Hephaestus, right?
yes, Hephaestus.
In a moment of doubt, not long after he forged her lasso, he used an inverted version of the same weave. It's said to be made from wool from the sheep Odysseus's men used to trick the Cyclops. It took me nearly 2 years to track it down on the magical black market. The suit isn't just armor; it's designed for war with the most powerful heroes on the planet.
Yeah. So this is Snyder riffing on the Batman has a plan for the Justice League,
Hmm.
and
Which is
in
interesting that like people have taken that idea in many different directions,
yeah,
and it was an idea originally, well, maybe not originally, but the first acted upon by Grant Morrison actually.
yeah, well, because that isn't that like what Tower of Babel's about? That's the
Yeah, yeah,
entire
yep,
story arc.
yeah.
What I think is interesting is when it's done well. Once again, there's a lot of things in this that also still feel very much how I said in the Death of the Family episode of Snyder, satirizing fandom.
Hmm.
This also feels like that, like because fandom likes to characterize Batman always having a plan in this almost power fantasy tough guy thing.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I think I think it's fair to say that Batman does always have a plan.
He's
He's one of the
he
smartest characters in the DC
he has a
universe.
plan, but he's not infallible, and he's
Yeah,
also like they also like to make it so it's almost this ruthless plan of I'm going to kill my friend, where it's like
yeah.
no, he because like
Hmm.
it's very clear that he doesn't want to do this. Like
Yeah, yeah.
um
We also learned throughout this that I forgot to mention it, but Batman is the one that set off the gas
the
that like
gas.
evacuated everyone from the city. Um, but then I love the build up to this to Flash coming into this scene. Um, I love this inner monologue. The next part happens faster than I can process it. I put more money into this suit than about 60% of the world's nations put into their respective militaries, and a good deal of that money went towards a protocol for one man, making sure the servers were fast enough for him, faster than any human reaction, fast enough to map his movements, assuming he wasn't at optimal speed, and then fire the frictionless coding exactly where it needs to be before he can react. The strike is so fast, the whole thing is over before I even know it, and it's done across 2 pages, and I love
Yes.
that. It's so good.
Um because
And then Aquaman
then
enters the scene.
which I think this might be one of my favorite interactions from this sequence, mainly because it feels paralleled to the Bruce Aquaman leadership dynamic in early Jeff Johns Justice League.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
it feels like a continuation, and I think that's great. Also, I think it's weird that like he just gunks him up in this pink goo,
Mhm.
um, which is kind of over the top. Um, I think the idea being that it's trying to dry him out, which I think is cool. Uh,
Mhm. And And yeah, so he finishes that off, and then as most Snyder issues do, while being part of a larger story, he perfectly caps off what he was doing from the beginning of the issue to the end here, because Superman enters the fight, and he smashes Bruce's suit through this theater, and Bruce's inner monologue here says, "The truth is, when gods do come down, it's terrifying because you never know what they're going to do," and as we close in on Superman here, and we look back on Diana, Barry, Arthur, and we see Clark once more. Um,
They all start laughing. Bruce is able to say, "No, no, not him. Oh, yes, Bruce. And no one's going to save you this time."
and it's this wonderful last page of just Clark Kent grinning like the Joker, and it's horrifying.
It's horrifying. So when I read this, I basically read 2 issues a night. Like I just because I could have probably binged this in one night, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
It's
was
a
like I
very
was like
easy one to get through.
I have to wait. I can't just binge everything.
Yeah.
Um, even knowing when we were going to record this episode, just because I needed to know what would happen. And
Yeah.
this is just a perfect ending to an issue. Um,
Mhm.
the issue 36 cover is terrifying.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah. Um, oh yeah.
uh,
We've done. Oh god, how many Batman Superman fights have we covered on this podcast now?
I think this is our fourth.
Let's see. We had the Dark Knight Returns one. We
Oh,
had
fifth, the
yeah,
Justice League
because there's the
origin
Justice League Origin one. Oh god, Hush and Strikes
strikes
Again,
again.
and now this. Wow, that
Yes,
that has been a lot.
and
And this
three
one
of
first,
those have been good.
yeah, yeah, and also interestingly, two of those, this being the second, are the result of Superman being brainwashed.
Yes,
And it's an interesting idea because it's if you did the Batman Superman fight, but Superman wasn't not trying to hurt his friend, um, and that's here. Like this is Superman completely uncontrollable, clearly taken over somehow by Joker. And we open up issue 36 wonderfully, exactly where we left off. Um, as Superman is attacking Batman once
well,
more.
yeah. We start with this interesting little 1 page prologue of Batman fighting um, a mutated Killer Croc, who which is this? I'm guessing this is a reference to Eternal. Like,
I can't remember. I can't remember Croc in Eternal.
yeah, or it feels like it might be a reference to something. But
Probably, maybe it's a
yeah,
detective thing because
but it's
I haven't read the whole New 52 Detective. It might be that.
ah. Well, this might be. Well, this is also sort of just it's this idea of fear of being pulled down, because
Mhm.
each issue kind of, in a way, like has times where it decides to pastiche like a different type of horror film.
Mhm.
Um, like the first issue is very horror action. This one is this one is kind of psychological for most of it.
Mhm.
But a
Well,
lot of
especially with
them,
how this one ends.
yeah, but a lot of them go psychological. Yeah. Uh, I think my favorite might be when he gets to do when Snyder decides to riff on certain pieces of Italian horror. And FCO's coloring goes these like amazingly stark colors, which we'll get to when we get to it. But yeah, so this Superman fight and what again such a fresh air after the last thing we read.
Well, it's
Just
interesting because Superman is written technically more as a villain here than Frank Miller
yes,
did.
yes, but
Um,
also he's brainwashed
Yeah, yeah.
and
And also,
like
once again, Greg Capullo is a horror artist. I love the way he draws Superman sometimes here, especially on this third page here when he's almost completely silhouetted and you just see the symbol in his eyes and the grin. Like, it's
yeah,
so good.
it's so creepy. But Bruce is just calling to his friend to try to get him to fight through this. Um,
Interestingly, as from last issue going into this one, Superman's skin has gotten more like pale. And it's
more
almost
yeah,
like
more
completely white
white.
when they eventually break out of the theater and go into the city. Um, and he just looks like the Joker then completely. It's really messed up. But like Superman will like do things that eventually to like get Bruce distracted. He like lasers down this building and it starts crumbling down. it topples on top of Bruce. Even in this giant mech suit, it's still messing
Yes.
with him.
What I think is interesting is that you have Clark saying, "So, Bruce, who wins in a fight, Batman or Superman?"
Which is once again Snyder commenting on fan
Yeah.
discussion, which
Um,
he loves to do. It's
well,
great.
because he eventually concludes that where the point is neither of them win in a fight. Neither of them would win. They would kill each other,
Hmm.
um, or they wouldn't fight. Um, yeah, and what's fascinating is that really to save his friend, Bruce has to get like really close, basically spit in his eye with just a capsule of kryptonite laced like dust and
Hmm.
water.
Which
Um,
causes Soups to fall down into the ocean. Bruce goes back to the Batcave after hospitalizing all of the Justice League, or everyone that he fought at least. Again, it's kind of weird. They show Green Lantern's hand and Cyborg on the cover, and they're nowhere in the issue.
well,
But
Cyborg operates the boom tube,
that is right. I forgot about that.
which is very brief. Part of me was hoping for like Vic Stone to actually do something, like just a little bit, because
Yeah, yeah.
it was a thing. It was an issue I had when we did Throne of Atlantis, is that Johns didn't let Victor Stone do much.
I swear, when we
Uh,
get back to Jeff Johns' Justice League, we're on a portion where like Vic is a pretty big part of it.
oh,
So
good, good.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Anyway, but yeah, so they're back in the Batcave. They're trying to analyze what's how Joker was able to get to the Justice League. Also, Alfred is not well recently, just results of Eternal, which is why Julie is sticking around here because Alfred is
yes,
just feeling unwell. He's walking around with a cane. He's coughing a lot, which makes for an interesting dynamic because especially in the Snyder run, Alfred and Bruce have had such a close connection. And so when Alfred is like more out of commission and Bruce is able to like get away with more without Alfred talking back to him, there's still that fight in Alfred, and Snyder still like captures that relationship.
yes. And what's especially interesting, one, is that we establish the Justice League is going to be out of commission for 4, maybe 5 days, which is terrifying thought,
Hmm.
because the DC universe is a dangerous place.
That it is.
Um, as well as just it's a nice inverse of the end of Death of the Family, where Bruce was taking care of Alfred and he hated it, but now, at least in this scene, Alfred's just like, no, 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 no. I'll be fine, sir. Now, if you'll pardon my language, go get that bastard. Um,
We then also just do some talking about Batman's history with the Joker, if both for the audience and for Julia, using Julia as the way to talk to the audience. And I love when Bruce brings up this picture of Joker on the back computer here. It's the death of the family look, and it almost feels like Capullo draws Joker here more gruesome than he looked even in
it,
that story.
well, it looks like the face is decomposed even more, and it's just
Yeah.
that wild-eyed.
Hmm.
Um,
Almost the idea that it has continued to decompose even after the story
yes.
is over. Ugh, well, it's so good. Oh my God. Um, but yeah, we talk about this new compound that the Joker has made. Um, Batman says, in his own twisted way, he sees himself as serving Batman. He thinks he makes Batman stronger by challenging him with his greatest nightmares. He sees himself as Batman's friend. He used to, at least. But after the last time we fought, if I glean any meaning in this first attack, it's friend turned enemy. Which again is just tapping into that idea that after Death of the Family, when Batman actively rejects Joker as his closest friend, possibly lover, Joker is now lashing out, and this is I would argue the first time we've talked about the Batman Joker relationship where Joker does not love Batman.
Oh, most definitely. Or where he's running on anger and just wanting to like being just this petulant. I want to be right. Let me be right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and the way that develops and it ends, it makes the ending this very bittersweet ending. Um, that I think really works, as well as just what the Joker's plan is, because the Joker is also sort of spent like did a biting of time just to wait, because then Bruce goes to the source, to Arkham Asylum,
Now this is another eternal thing with Arkham being condemned right now.
which
Uh,
I love it.
which again,
It's
you don't need to read Eternal for. You get that literally. It says right at the top, Arkham Asylum after the collapse. That's That's all you need. But it really makes Arkham Asylum all the more creepier, all the more creepy than it was before.
We have just
Batman's
these
passing by
images
like
of
all
like
these.
spider webs and there's
Mhm.
like a fly. There flies.
And as Batman is walking through, he thinks to himself. He thinks of the cell that Joker was always kept in whenever he brought Joker here. It's cell 0801, 801, the eighth and first letters of the alphabet, HA. I love that.
Which okay,
I just
that's an idea first brought up in the Killing Joke. Honestly, like
Did it say
that
that in?
yeah,
It says 801.
it's 0801 like that.
Wow. Hmm.
Those numbers they're there. And I love the use of shadow here. Um, like you can also physically see a bat trapped in the web in that first panel,
Hmm.
up in the right hand corner,
Yeah.
uh,
And
as
then
well
as
as
oh sorry, go ahead.
sort of I think this the sequence of the comic, basically the rest of this issue is kind of what got to me the most.
Oh yeah, this sequence is really gets under your skin.
Yeah,
So as Batman like makes his way to Joker's cell, an employee of Arkham comes in, one Mister
Eric
Eric Border.
Borg, who was
Um,
introduced in Graveyard Shift,
yes.
in the second annual, which
Mhm.
is and it's the second annual is basically from his point of view, sort of from his point of view, just as this gung ho guy from Metropolis who wants to help cure the sick, and he's a very sweet character, and you learn to really like him.
Yeah. And the fact that they made him such a genuine character even before this is what really
Yeah,
seals this scene. Um, so as Eric begins to unveil his plan, he traps Batman behind a cell. Eric says, "You really don't recognize me, do you? I admit I didn't think you would. There were the muscle relaxers, which wore off just a little while ago. Hard to keep my face this way, I admit. The pigmentation too. Do you know how much? I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Um, and such I had to take. Today is just makeup, which is why I stood at a distance. But still, of course, there's the new mug. The name, though, Eric comes from whatever,
yeah, it's
which is Proto Norse meaning eternal, and Rix, which means Gothic meaning prince, and border is a homophone for border, which is an obsolete word for jester. And so Eric Border's facade completely drops, revealing the Joker on this wonderful full page saying, "You miss me." And it's probably my favorite drawing that Capullo ever does of the Joker. I love this one.
it is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like ooh,
At
this is
which
where my
point,
heart
Joker pulls
sank.
out the old decaying face from Death of the Family, starts stretching it out in front of him, stretches it into a frown, no less. Oh, I love it. It's so good. And he talks about how he's unleashing this chemical across the city. People are turning all over Gotham. Um, and it's so good. Like, just it really does feel like Joker's plan has fallen completely into place here. And it really could not work any better in his favor.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that this issue ends with the Joker has this monologue, where he's, I used to think we could have fun, you and me, but no, now I know you better. But here's the funny thing, me, you don't actually know a thing about me, do you? I'm still a total stranger. You might pretend you know me, but deep down, oh, you'll see though. You'll see soon enough. Yes, time to slit the goat's throat, old friend. And I promise you one thing. When you come out of it, everyone in Gotham, the whole city will be laughing at you.
And then he shoots Batman, presumably in the face. And that is that. As a fly flies across there, perfectly paralleling the end of Death of the Family. And then we go into Batman 37, which is the cover of the trade collection.
Which,
And
yeah,
then, on top of that, we get a parallel to Death of the Family about him staring into Joker's face. The whole monologue there, where they show Joker's face. This time seeing Bruce in this like pained, still expression. And I just really like that parallel.
literally paralyzed and back in the Batcave while Alfred and Julia are trying to at least get some analysis on the Joker toxin as Gotham City goes to shit. Like
As it always does.
almost immediately the city collapses, um, and Bruce is just trying to be like, right, I need to stop him. I need to figure out, and this is where we get some very interesting pieces of character development in general, right? First, we find out this Joker toxin spreads like a virus. So this issue is doing pandemic horror. Um, which
which is
I think
just
it
lovely.
does it so well. Um, and uh, you see this idea that that even though they've tried to cure some people, they just keep laughing, and the laughing is the way it spreads, which is so terrifying.
Well, yeah,
Like,
even the way it's like laid out, like Bruce says, a laugh is a series of diaphragmatic spasms, coughs in a rapid fire, a virus that spreads like laughter. Damn, which is great. It's perfectly Joker that he's thought of even that.
and the idea is that this virus just keeps mutating.
Mhm.
Um,
Bruce asks about like how they've tested like antitoxins, steroids, anything that like might help to counteract it, and Julia's like, we tried all of them, literally all of them. Nothing is working. Um,
which is again terrifying because this the Joker toxin is deadly, and they don't know how deadly this one is.
mhm.
Um,
Then Bruce calls one Jim Gordon, and I love this so much. Gordon's phone starts ringing for Batman, and it's I fought the law and the law won.
which is one that's a customized ringtone.
Yes, that he
You
put in
you
specifically for his friend Batman.
but yeah, well, also Bruce is going to try to find basically patient zero,
Yeah.
to find the source of the infection, see what we can do there, and maybe find a cure that way. We also find out that it's been a couple of days for the paralyzing agent that got Bruce to actually wear off. So like time is passing, and that's just scary.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, but there's this just this great idea that at the church, and with Gordon, Snyder's doing Night of the Living Dead. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah. The
have
way
the
the way
boarded
he's
up
like boarded
windows.
himself up in here. He's got like literal wood planks over the walls. Like it's great.
You see this
Um,
red-haired Jokerized woman trying to break in.
mhm.
Um, and
Batman
it's
does this little like fly over the city and sees just how many people are turned and how fast it's spreading.
and
Um,
this whole idea is that it makes you go after your loved ones first,
yeah,
which
which
is
which again has no it has no basis in science. There's no way that anything like that would ever work. But and especially for a run like Snyder's, which has been so at least attempted based in fact,
well, I think it fits really well here because the story is going for a mythic quality,
Well, yeah,
especially
yeah,
when we get
because of what Snyder's going for with Joker specifically here.
yeah, and the fact that it's the idea of something that just it's going to break Bruce.
Yeah.
It's going to break him.
Hmm.
Um, but Bruce makes it to the hospital where he's going to try and find um, basically try to find patient zero.
Hmm.
Uh,
Meanwhile, Gordon is researching into like some old newspaper articles, and he finds this picture um, where Joker is just sort of lurking in the background. What is?
of it's of Gotham Presbyterian, the hospital where patient zero is,
Mhm.
and
When do they say the newspaper is from?
um, 1910.
Love it.
We
And you see,
and
you just see like in the shadows behind it all, like Joker's face like poking through there.
and
Gordon then continues to look through like other newspaper articles, something
he
in
sees one from yeah
1946.
1946, and it's this first interesting idea of like the Joker as the idea of the pale man,
And then
which
Gordon pulls out a picture of his children together with a white arm in a nurse's
in
outfit, just sort
scrubs,
of
yeah,
scrubs. That's oh my god, I couldn't think of the word.
yeah, just creaking through the
Reaching through.
door,
Yeah. And
and
also, interestingly, when like Gordon is like still looking through these, I love this one panel here where you could see the reflection in his glasses, and it almost looks like Brian Boland's Joker drawings from Killing Joke.
yes,
I love
which
that with the gleaming eyes. Like, oh, it's so good.
which is intentional, especially with some of the alternate covers for some of these issues,
Yeah, yeah.
specifically homaging Killing Joke.
Hmm.
as well as homaging the mask,
Hmm.
which is that's a choice. Um,
But
and then
yes,
Gordon hears a noise.
he goes over to his closet. A purple boxing glove comes punching out, and it takes him out. And then Joker's not even in there. He's under Gordon's bed.
Another callback to Death of the Family,
Yep.
which
Uh, and
again
then
terrifying.
Batman goes to find his patient zero, and it is none other than Joe
Joe
Chill.
Chill. So this time it's personal.
Yes,
Like
very
the
personal. So personal that afterwards, as Batman leaves, there's a recreation of the night his parents died. A family walking out of seeing Zorro. Not just any family, the family of Duke Thomas.
who, which oh god, this hurts. Like
As Joker crawls out from under Gordon's bed like a zombie himself.
Like he's just
Like,
saying like, "Oh, come on now, Jimbo. I've got so much new material to test out."
and you just see how absolutely perfect this plan is that Joker has put together. So much so that you almost feel in this moment like Joker knowing who Batman is the least of his worries, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's a big deal, but Joker is just gonna straight up kill Jim Gordon here. Like he doesn't care at this point. Joker, you really do feel like does not care about playing games, getting to Batman, putting on shows. He just wants to kill him. He wants to kill everybody he knows, loves, cares about, and then kill Bruce.
Yes, and this is also the art style. Like in the crime alley like scene, it's a set. It looks like a German expressionist thing. Like this feels like it's from Nosferatu or the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And for
Hmm.
this entire sequence, this is where the colors really get that sort of Italian cinema, like dark, deep reds that just
Hmm.
contrast everything.
Yeah.
Um,
And then like this the two scenes start playing side by side as the Duke Thomas Joe Chill thing goes into like these deep blues and all of Gordon's house is on fire as Joker comes at him with an axe. It's so good. It's such a good moment. We parallel like Gordon aiming his gun at Joker with Joe Chill aiming the gun at Duke and his parents. Um all leading up to Joe Chill, of course, shooting the gun, as Jim does as well, actually supposedly killing the Joker, leaving him on the ground there. Um, and all these other Jokerized patients start attacking Batman and Duke and all of them. Batman goes to get Duke out of there as his parents are taken by Joker toxin, and Gordon then is literally crying over the fact that he just killed the Joker because he's just so happy about it.
I know it's bleak, Batman. I know it seems like like it's all well burning, but at least there's that. As the
Yeah.
Joker just gets up behind him, Batman bursts through a wall with Duke.
And continues on the call with Gordon. Joker picks up Gordon's phone and says, "Hello, Bruce." Ending issue 37, bringing us into issue
Just
38.
and ooh,
I
okay,
wanted
like
okay. On your first read, I have to know your thoughts going through it at this moment.
so my brain is like, okay, he's somehow immortal and somehow immortalized himself throughout history. I
And
didn't think it was going to be he's actually immortal.
and
Um,
and as Snyder so wonderfully does in most of his other arcs, he still plays around with is what's actually happening here the truth? You know,
yes,
bringing us back to Court of Owls. Is Lincoln March actually Bruce's brother? Is the Joker? Does the Joker actually know all the identities of all the Bat family? And here, does I mean, obviously he knows that Batman's Bruce, but is he actually immortal? How long has the Joker existed?
really been
Um,
around.
yeah,
Was the Zero issue and the stuff in Zero Year where you saw the birth of the Joker there, or like the Killing Joke, was this an example of multiple choice?
yeah.
Um,
Oh my God, it's so
and
good.
I think it's utterly fascinating that um, Snyder then give for this one gives essentially definitive answers of what's true um,
Mhm.
and what isn't. Um, and it's I think it's I think it's just really clever. And there's just some things that he does in the back half of this story arc that I that I fucking love.
Yeah,
Like,
and we are about to enter that back half.
yes.
So we open on our title page, of course. Batman is taking Duke through the city, brings Duke over to Gordon's place. Going up to see Gordon. Gordon has an axe lodged into his chest, and
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 Gordon is still kind of making jokes, which you
mhm.
might think, oh, is he infected, or is he just Jim Gordon trying to see like something good coming from the fact that he has a fucking axe in his chest?
But then as Batman talks to Duke, Gordon gets up behind him, full on Joker pose, face and everything. It like Jim Gordon has never looked more terrifying.
Um,
He
we
picks
do
up
the
the
Shining
axe.
bit
I was gonna
basically.
say yeah, he does the Shining. Um, and uh and then where Julia comes in and shoots two trank darts into Gordon, knocking him out, of course. And then
And she comes in with this witty one-liner. I know, but I'm just not a bloody cave person. And again, I love that one thing with Julia is that she kind of, for a lot of the first half, up until sort of the very end, probably until issue like 39, she represents the entire Bat family, basically.
yeah, oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
mainly, but not because like the rest of the Bat family's pushed away. They're just doing other things at
Hmm.
the moment. And what I think is like I was interestingly going in expecting like no Bat family at all. Like
Hmm.
I was expect yeah.
Well, sorry about that.
Look, that's an expectation I'm glad to be proved wrong on because Batman. My thesis about Batman as a character is that he's just better when he has a family.
I agree. I agree.
Uh,
But speaking of Bat Family, as Julia takes Duke away, Batman then contacts Dick Grayson, who you knew at this time what had been Nightwing's death was fake, and he is
this
Agent
is the first
Grayson.
time Dan DiDio put Nightwing out of commission. Um, this time apparently this one's actually good though. He becomes a super spy.
It's also written by Tom King. I've not read the Grayson series, but it's Tom King and Mikkel Hannon. Like that's a great creative team on that.
Yeah.
Um,
But
yeah.
what's also interesting is that we also find out there's basically a timer. Is that it's deadly, and we don't necessarily know how long it'll happen.
Hmm.
Um, I love that Dick is just in this code name of Mr. Malone calling.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because at this point, like you never really know like who's listening. Just how far
Yeah.
Joker has rooted himself into the city.
Yes,
Um,
which yeah, I I don't know. I almost cheered when Dick showed up. I'm like, yes, he's here. We are in good hands.
yeah. Snyder also nails the Dick Grayson characterization. Like no matter what form Dick Grayson comes in, like Snyder just nails that characterization.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, Dick is sort of like guiding Batman through the city as they're talking about what's going on. My favorite bit here is easily when like Batman goes like running around this corner and Dick is like, no, don't go there. And Batman's like, just shut the fuck up. I got this. And he goes around the corner. And there's just a fucking tank there that fires on him.
Which
It's
is
great.
again just terrifying image. This is apocalypse coming to Gotham City, um, and like it's infecting the United States military. Um, and what I think is really great is here's where we actually start making connections to the other two Scott Snyder arcs, right?
Hmm.
Like, which is partially why I think this really works as a possible ending because we're tying every arc that Snyder has done so
Hmm.
far back together. Like basically we find out that basically the team that Doctor Death was working for in Zero Year was possibly working on the Joker toxin, current
Hmm.
with two other doctors. Um, including a Dr. Paul Decker, who we're going to see, and it turns out that that Decker was in Arkham and was released on orders by one Eric Border.
Yes.
So again, terrifying.
So
And then
Batman decides.
Bruce tells Dick that the Joker knows who we are.
Mhm.
Um,
And I like that Bruce is so open with Dick in this moment.
he's
Like he
he's
like. those barriers that we saw in those previous two, in those first two arcs are almost like no longer there.
They
Um,
like, and but it doesn't feel like his defenses are down. It feels like he's
yeah,
finally
but you can
trusting
just
his
tell
family.
that his relationship with the Bat family has sort of mended since Family, um, especially considering the death of Damien. I think Snyder really did take a lot of that into account when characterizing Bruce in these later issues.
Yes, and I love it as an idea. Um,
Mhm. But yeah, so Bruce has to go see uh, Decker, and we get this great little just full page here of these like expanding panels of Joker diving into this pool and swimming towards the reader. It's terrifying. I love
it
it. It's
Capullo
so
is
good.
is a horror author.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's just like, and he's wearing like the least threatening costume too. It's just like an all black swimsuit. He's got these goofy like green goggles on, and he just
Yet it
comes
makes
forward.
it all the scarier
Yeah. Oh
somehow.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because
like this is
yeah.
basically the costume he's kind of in for the rest of the arc too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
um,
great. But we
and
go to see Decker, and
we start with some musings on possibilities of immortality, um, referencing the Hydra, which of course is a piece of Greek myth, but also an actual like organism that exists. It's a microorganism called a Hydra because it kind of acts like a Hydra. You cut off a limb and it grows it back. Um, which just interesting ideas, as well as lobsters, because yeah, lobsters are kind of effectively immortal theoretically. And we see Decker. So is okay. Is Decker like an established Batman character?
I don't believe so.
Well, isn't there like a Batman character called like Crazy Quilt?
You're probably right. You
Because
sounded pretty sure of that when you said that.
I was like, I think this is I think like the sort of blanket he's wrapped in is like Crazy Quilt, who I'm pretty sure was like a Silver Age character. Um,
mm, I believe so. Yeah, I think that is technically meant to be him, though
yes, it
he has
is. I
never.
just Googled it.
Yeah, though he has
Crazy
never been turned into Crazy Quilt since.
Crazy Quilt,
Um,
real name Paul Decker.
Hot
So,
damn! Wow.
yeah. So Snyder's also just going for obscure Batman villains.
Well, he was already in Zero
Yeah,
Year.
but he's doing it even more, which is great. Um, and you also see, this painting he's done of Jokers coming out of the water, in one panel, and he has the ramblings of a madman, where you're trying to figure out like
Well, no,
what's
that's isn't that supposed to be Raish?
oh yeah, it
It,
is
yeah,
Raish.
yeah, they show Raish on the next page there.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway, but yeah, so
with other again other legendary ideas of rising out of the waters and becoming immortal,
mhm.
throughout the speech. The
And I
River
really want to know
Styx.
because it's pretty clear at this point what Snyder is going for. Your thoughts on the immortal Joker thing?
I I kind of like it as an idea, but not necessarily as like the physical man, the Joker, always being the
Hmm.
Joker.
See,
Uh,
I love it here. I really, really do, and I think like Snyder's probably the only writer that could really make it work.
yeah, and
But
it
it
works
becomes
because
pretty
it's
clear.
isolated to
It becomes
this.
pretty yeah, it becomes pretty clear like why things like the three Jokers exist. You know, why we just wanted to say like, okay, different writers' interpretations of the Joker should probably be separated. Not
Yeah,
necessarily as separate characters, but just, don't go trying to say that, killing Joker is probably the same guy here, you know?
yeah,
Those are
uh,
clearly separate guys because
yeah,
Alan writes a totally different backstory for him.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I just think that's important to note here. And but I do think Snyder, in going for the immortal Joker thing, I think it should definitely be taken as fact here and at face value.
Yeah. Yes, and I think it's brilliant to tie it to Ra's al Ghul and then Vandal Savage.
Mhm.
Savage isn't a character I'm the most familiar with. I know they did him in the Arrowverse.
Yeah,
Uh,
he was like a Legends of Tomorrow thing, right?
yeah, because
Yeah.
I think I saw like the pilot for Legends of Tomorrow.
Wasn't he like the villain of the first season though of Legends?
Maybe.
I know I watched like the first two seasons of Legends, but it's mostly a blur to me.
I only watched the first couple of episodes because Arthur Darvill was in it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which
I
like
remember always thinking at the time that that Matt Smith should have played Booster Gold in the
Ooh,
CW.
that would have.
Well,
I mean,
do you know the thing with with Rip Hunter as a character?
no, but
He's Booster Gold's son.
oh, I want that to happen
Yeah,
though. Like,
yeah. See what I'm saying?
that's like perfect casting.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so
Yeah.
Decker peppers in a lot of references. He tries to shoot Batman down, but he's been monologuing. Batman hangs him by his quilt outside of sort of the window, um, and I'd like to just focus in on this idea of um, that like that he was able to synthesize this dionysium as sort of a chemical to give the Joker eternal life and regenerate his face. I love how Decker sort of hang up the window says, "For a bat, you don't listen well, do you? It's gone, extinct for hundreds of years, but it's in him because he's one of them. He's Gotham's own Dionysian man. Dionysus, the god of madness and tragedy. The very word tragedy means goat song in ancient Greek. For all the goats slaughtered to him. And don't you see the Gotham is the great sacrifice. So welcome, Batman, to the last Bacchanal." Again, a lot of Greek myth references there. So a Bacchanal is like just a mad drunk party of revelry. Um,
Huh.
so that's essentially what this is. Dionysus as a mythic figure has a very interesting history of different sort of incarnations on when he sort of entered what you could call the Greek canon. Also, where we get the words the idea of Zagreus or Zagreus.
Hmm.
Um, and what's it's really interesting here of connecting the Joker to Dionysus in particular.
I know I'm showing you like this whole podcast is me showing you like funny cape shit, but I feel like I get like a history lesson every episode. It's
Well,
nice.
listen, that's what I'm here for. This is why I'm irreplaceable.
This is
Um,
true. This is true. Though I have joked about taking you off the podcast many a time. Um,
yes. Uh,
anyway, so um Decker here has like convinced himself that he is supposed to be like the next uh
the next immortal.
yeah,
He's
and so he like has like this needle that Joker gave him that he believes will make him immortal, and he injects himself with it, and he just begins to immediately decompose
he
and die right
melts
there.
basically, and it's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Oh yeah. Again,
Also,
we're completely looking at the
we find
list.
out quickly everyone's gonna die in 24 hours
Yes.
because oh boy. Um,
Because things are only getting worse. And so Batman says, well, Julius says to Batman, Batman, are you there? Batman, to which Bruce says, this can't be real. It can't end this way. It can't. Julius says, what are you going to do? Batman says, something I never thought I would. The next panel goes black, and then we end the issue on a full page of Batman standing in water in the labyrinth, the same labyrinth from the Court of Owls in front of said Court of Owls. To which Batman says, all right, let's talk
let's talk
about
about
history.
history. At this point,
And
I am like, okay, this is the end.
I know like you weren't expecting that at all, right? Like that had to come as
Like,
like the biggest shock there.
like what? Well, just like what the hell?
Well,
Like
think about it even like if we're delving into Joker's roots in Gotham,
Gotham. Yeah, I
if we're
mean,
going back to the roots of Gotham, who else do we go to? It's great. It's a great idea. And then I love the cover of 39.
yes. Real quick
Joker
question:
on this.
were the court like the big bad behind Eternal?
I kind of want to answer that, but I don't want to either. Do you want me to
Were they at
it's
least involved in it?
one member of the court was.
Okay, because it feels like they might have been just from.
Well, I kind of want to tell you because it's not going to really ruin your reading experience. He only shows up in the last couple issues of Eternal, and it's Lincoln March.
Ah,
Yeah.
which that makes some of the references to Lincoln March in this story make a bit more sense because
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So if I remember correctly, the court doesn't actually show up themselves, but Lincoln March is there. So
Okay, so they're clearly involved if Lincoln March is there.
mhm.
Um, so issue 39. Um, And here was where we kind of reflect on the death of Batman.
And I
Uh,
love this opening here. So, in Batman's inner monologue, my enemies have a secret pact. They don't think I know about it, but I do. The pact is, on the day I die, they will shine the bat signal over the city. It was Joker's idea. A light in the sky to commemorate me. A bat hanging upside down at rest. Seeing it now, it's like the city thinks I'm dead already, and I'm narrating my own funeral from deep in the underworld. In this underworld, Batman is talking to the court, and the court is just kind of toying with him. They're almost like happy that he came to them.
because it's this idea again. One, we're following Greek tragic hero trajectory. This being a literal going into the underworld once again, and the court here essentially representing gods. They have forbidden knowledge, and they aren't going to give like they aren't giving it to him. They're telling him things he basically already knows.
Hmm.
Like he already knows there's a corrupted version of the Dionysium. He knows that the Joker has the pure version.
Hmm.
And then they have him look up at this giant marble model of Gotham City hanging upside down. And they declare they're just going to let the city burn. And the way Batman reacts to this is just brilliant. Like Gotham is still his city and he's still going to save it, damn it.
Hmm. He throws a batarang at it, and the marble model like drops into the water below, and out comes this Talon here. Not just any Talon, but it's supposed to be he was one of the first Talons. Uriah. Did they say his last name?
They just say
Uriah Boone. Yeah. Um, and I love this old like classic Talon costume here. It's a really cool idea.
it
He
also
comes
looks more like a rat than an owl in
Yeah,
places,
yeah.
which I
He
think
comes
is
out
an
with this,
interesting
this like
image.
Grim Reaper scythe thing, and it's great. I love it. This is a great fight between them, and Batman is like was pretty much like counting on this guy coming out. And so Batman says, "Just tell me one thing: was he around then? Was he around when you were active 400 years ago? The Joker, the Pale Man, was he?" To which we don't actually get the answer to that, but we can assume he's correct that he is
Yes.
or he was, well, still is, I guess. And so Batman resurfaces. He's fighting off these
Just
other
people.
Jokerized people, um,
And
as
he's monologuing, continuing his monologue essentially about coming to terms with death, reminiscing about a point where Dick Grayson was Robin so many years ago, all 8 of them, because this is the new 52.
hey, give it credit. It was like 9 years ago.
Okay, 9 years. Um, but yeah, and this feels like, oh, he is fully expecting not to make it out of this alive.
Yeah, and
Um,
uh, and then we go to like the best scene here in this issue. Um, Joker, we find out where he was swimming to in the last issue. He makes his way to the Batcave. He surfaces here. We see his face is all fucked up, like the side of his face is like acid burned almost. Um, and
Probably
so he
getting through the Batcave's like underwater defenses
Well,
because the
yeah,
courts
yeah,
are
that's what Alfred
underwater
says.
defenses.
That's what Alfred says. He made it through the cave's defenses. But Alfred is the first one to greet him. He shoots at Joker, takes off a
With a
piece of his ear with a shotgun.
gun.
Interestingly, he misses Joker and shoots open the glass case that the Red Hood dome is in, um,
Yes.
and that falls out. But then, oh, I love this moment, but it's so fucked up.
It's
Um,
yes.
Joker hides from Alfred and waits until Alfred gets close enough. Comes up with this like butcher's
Cleaver. Yeah,
knife.
it's a cleaver
Um,
and
and
cleaves off his hand.
Poor Alfred. Oh my God, look at that. Oh, that is so fucked up. Um, another thing that I'm sure, like, Snyder did like a lot of things with his run, but something as like permanent as that, I'm sure like you weren't expecting at all, right?
I was not. I imagine Alfred gets his hand back though eventually.
Um, you know what? I haven't paid attention to Alfred's hand much since
Well,
post New
I am
52.
going to
It's at
pay
least that
attention
it's
to
at
this.
least that way for the rest of the New 52. So
Okay, so this has lasting consequences. Okay.
yeah.
Um,
But also interestingly, I want you to put this in perspective for a second. We're on issue 39. There were only about 13 more months of New 52 publishings after this
you're
issue.
right.
They only went on for about a year after this story was over with
Right,
the new.
because then Rebirth happened,
Yep.
and
Yeah. Just putting that in
yeah,
perspective, like how far we've come in this run. Like issue 40 was, I believe, the cutoff point when the New 52 stopped labeling itself the New 52 and it was just a regular DC comic.
right. Because this is why the collected edition doesn't have the new 52 branding,
Yep. And why it
which
has the new logo and everything. Or no, sorry, the new logo starts on the next book, I think.
yes,
Um,
yeah, because I mine still has the old logo.
yeah.
Interestingly,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So Julie gets back in contact with Batman,
Mhm.
um, and we find out Alfred is stable. Alfred's not
Mhm.
going to die in this story, thank
Yep.
God, because that would hurt.
Oh my
Like,
god. You okay, anyway, okay, moving on. You'll know why I find that funny in many, many years, probably.
okay,
Um, anyway, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so Joker puts on a Jack Nicholson style parade.
yes,
Um,
yes,
and I
and
gotta be honest, I read this scene for the reread, and the only thing that was going through my head was the Prince song that plays
yes,
during the
yes,
scene in '89.
and he's on top of a fucking dinosaur.
Yeah, a Joker painted dinosaur. I love
And
it.
I think the idea is that these are all just things he stole from the Batcave.
Oh yeah. Well, other than I guess the floats behind him.
Yeah,
I do love the giant balloon, the clown balloons behind him though. They're great. Um, but also just like Joker looks so goddamn deranged here. Um, I'm looking at the right hand page here of this spread, the left panel on that one. Like that face, he's so far gone. He is
yeah.
so far gone at this point. Um,
Well, this is sort of where I have a feeling that basically this is all. The rest of this is essentially the dance macabre, the dance of death.
mhm,
Everything is dancing to a conclusion.
yeah,
The
yeah.
Joker shouts out something about doing a lumbering dance to
Mhm.
just the right chords,
And
which
so Batman calls out that he's baiting him. He knows what he's doing. Apparently,
it's
the
to
Dionysium is in his spine, the
spine.
lumbar.
Yes, which is
Yeah,
clever wordplay. Um, and it's at this point where Bruce finally has a fucking plan.
and
Like
so he gets the family together. We have Barbara, Tim, Jason,
Jason,
and Harper. They're all together, and joining them is the Rogues Gallery.
the Rogue.
We
This was
have
the
Killer.
twist where my brain was like, oh, you know what? This works.
Yeah, the enemy of my enemy and all that. We have Croc, Scarecrow, Bane, Clayface, Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, and Penguin. It's a great lineup. It's a really great lineup of villains. Um, and Batman just wants them to work together because if nothing else, if it is the end of Batman, Batman does not want it to be the end of Gotham City.
Yeah, and I think this is a really hard thing to pull off. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
I think the villains, the rogues he chose were all perfect. Were all pretty much perfect choices because, like, say if he chose the Riddler wouldn't. He wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah. The Riddler's also
Um,
not physically capable. Like these are all physically capable villains.
like he chose villains who have the potential, mostly who a lot of them who have potential for redemption, and
Mhm.
in some cases, especially in the case of Poison Ivy, kind of have had redemption over the years.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I love the way they're characterized.
Yeah. So before we go into this final fight, Joker looks on in his binoculars and says, "Perfect. Now, friends, for the best trick of all." And we go into Batman number 40, which I remember seeing this cover for the first time when it was revealed that this issue was coming out, and everyone had already known they're gonna kill off Bruce or something. Um, and they were just like people were I remember people hated this cover because it was just so ugly for a send off to Bruce Wayne as a character.
Well,
Um,
I don't think they understand what it's.
My
What?
thoughts exactly. Yeah, but I remember those being the complaints at the time that they were like, oh, that's an awful cover. But I think it's perfect.
Well, it's I mean it's Saint George and the Dragon.
Hmm.
It's with to the story end this very mythic story that's been peppered with references to several different mythologies is ending with a suitably mythic cover, and it's designed like stained glass, um, and like it might be my favorite cover of the volume, honestly. Like
Nice,
like
nice.
just for what it represents, what it
I think I
does.
might love the bloody Superman one, if for nothing else, just as its own piece of art.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And I mean,
Um,
it helps that the covers, none of the covers miss. They all
oh
do
yeah, I mean
something.
they're all Capullo. They all absolutely nail
Like,
it.
if I
Um,
had to say, probably the first one was kind of the weakest
yeah,
by
only because it's the one that
design.
it's the one that like least pertains to the story, I'd say.
Yeah,
You know,
and it's a misdirect. So, Batman number 40.
this is it.
This
This
is
is
it.
it's. I think this is probably in this run at least the most event issue we've covered.
Yeah, this
Because
is
I don't think you've ever, other than like Jason Todd, which was meant to be permanent. This is like the first, like, sort of, because it happens a lot in comics. This is the first, like, I guess, gimmicky death you've read.
very, very gimmicky.
But Snyder doesn't treat it. Snyder does treat it like the end of Bruce Wayne.
He treats it with the weight that it deserves.
Hmm.
And
Even though everybody knows they're gonna bring back Bruce in a few issues, nobody's fooled by that. Maybe a year at the most.
yeah, which uh,
Snyder still treats it with gravity, and
and it feels like he also wants to specifically do it, at least the Fallout, different from what Morrison had done, um, when they had killed off Bruce Wayne in
mhm.
Final Crisis and had Dick become Batman. Because
Yeah.
okay, for the audience, I have been told going into Super Heavy that it's Jim Gordon as Batman,
Hmm.
which is what makes me really want to read it because that sounds
Hmm.
like a fascinating idea.
It's a cool idea because Gordon is not the ideal Batman, you know?
Well, no, because
Um,
he's a flawed person.
I remember
Uh,
actually, I don't know how much it's going for now, but actually, I told you already, I wasn't getting the series in single issues as it was coming out. Um, but I did pick up Batman number 41, which was the debut Gordon as Batman issue. I don't know how much it's going for now, but I have that still as a single issue.
Interesting.
Um, yeah.
But
Anyway,
yes,
but yeah, so we open where it all began, or possibly began. Um,
possibly can.
Batman
Where
trying to save Red Hood one from the vat of
from
acid.
a vat of acid, a boy, another boy, a vat of acid. Like many DC love
Interestingly here,
stories.
I think Capullo draws this recreation of the scene more like how he drew Ace Chemicals in the present day with Death of the Family when Harley was there, rather than how it was actually
Yes.
portrayed in Zero Year. We don't see the bottom half of his face. We don't see the smile. We don't see all these vast colors and the fire that was going on around them.
It's
It feels more
me,
personal.
which works because it's supposed to be a memory.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's meant to be how Batman remembers that very important moment in his life.
and of
Uh,
course, memory cheats. And
yeah.
then we get our title page, which is just this amazing spread where you have, the Bat family and the Rogues working together. Um, I love how every character gets at least a little bit of a time to shine and like one bit of dialogue. Like Jason has a line at one point that I remember like actually kind of laughing at just because Jason Todd's dramatic.
Hmm.
Uh, but you have, the Joker has this monologue. Look at him; he keeps coming against all odds. Even though it's futile, that's our boy. Here, take a look, my dear. You must be so proud. As he then dances with a skeleton in a dress on the head of a dinosaur.
It's so good.
We have
I
entered over
love
the
it.
top. You have Poison Ivy essentially using her plants to basically slow things down. Bane throwing Batman
Yeah.
towards the T Rex.
Yep. And I love it as if like they planned this out, as if like Bruce Wayne and Bane like made a game plan, It's just a cool idea. So he tosses him over to the T-Rex. Joker pulls out a chainsaw trying to get him off of there. Just this great little fight on top of the dinosaur. Um, more fighting out in the crowd. Oh yeah, and then Batman goes for Joker's spine, and Joker calls out that he says, you really thought it'd be easy. Even after all this time, you still crack me up. What's that? I can't hear you over the 140 decibels of mirth. He sets off like this thing in the crowd. I did
Of
tell you though,
laughing.
the last time you'd ever hear would be the city laughing at you, and I guess now all it's left to do is add mine to the chorus and close the curtain. As for the gas, nothing funny about it, I'm afraid, just good old death in a can. It won't affect my friends though, or only yours, the party crashers. It's fast too, acts in seconds. Deep breath, and then keeps explaining and explains even more. He goes on further, eventually getting to the point. Here we go. Um, a small reserve. Oh shit! I am dropping everything. Jesus Christ.
He's
But yeah. Where am I trying to get to? Where he says that he doesn't actually have the Dionysium. Oh, he does have the Dionysium in his spine, but it won't be active. Like even if he extracted it, like it wouldn't work. It would like dry up in seconds. He says. I
and
can't find that in the dialogue. Jesus. There it is. Okay, it was literally the next panel that I had to read.
Yeah. The nectar in my neck, I already tainted it. That's right. It's not extractable. Even if you'd harvested my honey, it would have dried up in your hands. But here's the kicker. Oh, this is good because take a look, Batsy. See, there is still some Dionysium, you dolts. That's right, a small reserve. But it's there, deep under Gotham, through the winding tunnels and twisting traverses, down at the very bedrock, hidden wired to blow. If only you'd known your city better. If only you'd been the Bat King it needed, but you're nothing more than a little boy crying for his parents, the most human weakness of all. Ooh, so be sad, baby Bat. We'll watch it. You watch it all go night night. But see, those same eyes that saw mommy and daddy gunned down, those lying eyes of Bruce. What the fuck?
and
It's so good.
okay, this twist got me. I was
Yeah,
like,
as
because
it
my brain was
should.
like, okay, Dick's not here, but he's off being a super spy, so like, why would he be here?
Yeah, but Joker pulls off Batman's mask and it's Dick Grayson there, which is even better because you literally just called out that about the Dick Grayson Batman era. Um, so that's
Yeah,
interesting. But yeah, it's Dick here, and Bruce has actually escaped. He's gone down into the reserve. He's gone to the pit. Um, and he's succeeding. He has successfully tricked the Joker. You actually see the fear on Joker's face, the fact that
he
his plan
he
didn't actually work out how it wanted.
he is the god swooping in at the last minute to save the day and save
Mhm.
our heroes, which is just really really interesting. What I love that this was all just a distraction, and I love that it essentially works.
Mhm.
Um, and you have Julia just always in contact, trying to get him to hurry up and get the fuck out of there because it's going to blow any second.
hmm So he does extract it though. He gets like this little like bat ball thing, um, and he's ready to send it up when of course everything starts blowing up and Joker comes in and stabs Batman in the neck, and we get this wonderful sequence where Joker flipping around like he's Dick Grayson. Has with two knives, stabs one in Batman's like shoulder blade. It makes a big gash across his lower back, and then
So his
stabs the
back
other
is
knife.
smiling
Then the other knife in his other shoulder blade, and so he literally has a smile on carved onto his back.
while
And
explosions are going off and this cave is going to blow.
mhm. um, Batman like takes like this like cinder almost that's like falling from the ceiling, smashes into Joker's face. Joker does the same to him. They're both really fucked up and bloody. And oh my God, Greg Capullo is a horror artist. I know we always say this, but he's so good at it. Like this is so gory.
It is.
but but in the most tasteful way, I think. I don't think it's like upsetting to look at. It's
No,
just.
it's very nice to look at, and it makes sense as
Mhm.
this is the desperate final fight.
Yeah, and it is
Like
meant to be like, just as horrible and bloody as it is.
like
Um,
Bruce essentially monologues that he's won, and Joker then basically can't handle it and has a stabs him, gets him on the ground, has this great idea of how he basically wanted a happy ending and didn't get it. It
mhm.
could have been funny, Um,
Yeah. And then this big like rock falls down from the ceiling, getting Joker in the back. Him and Bruce are both bleeding down on the ground. As things are falling from the ceiling again, Joker reaches towards the pit as Bruce holds him back. Joker is so desperate here and wants nothing more than to survive at this point because he thinks this might actually be the end. And this is the great thing. It's similar to how Death of the Family ends because Batman actually gets under Joker's skin. He knows what Joker's afraid of in this moment. Um, and right now, in this story, Joker did just want to kill Batman, and Batman is not afraid of death. That it
yeah,
doesn't. The idea doesn't scare him. He's ready to bleed out here with Joker. Um,
we find out that he sent up Dionysium so that Gotham will have a cure. He put a impure form from one of Decker's sort of concoctions into the masks that the Bat family and the Bat enemies wore.
and as these final couple rocks fall down from the ceiling and crash into the pit, completely sealing that off. And then the scene ends. Joker and Batman both bleeding out. Finally, a playing card shoved into Batman's eye. Julia calls Bruce. Bruce, come in. The cave system is collapsing, and your vitals. You're bleeding out. Joker's last line here is just no, no, no. It gets like smaller and smaller as he dies. Julia says, "Listen to me. Open the eye and take some of the Dionysium. Take it fast." Bruce says, "No. Opening it could compromise the structure. Take the eye up now." Julia says, "Not without you. You can still." Bruce cuts her off. Says, "Julia, take it up. I'm just going to rest here a little while with my friend." As the cave system collapses, the Dionysium is sent up. Everyone is saved, and that's that.
We have one final little scene as an epilogue.
Julia is sitting by Alfred in a hospital bed, or
Gotham is
yeah, it's two
Gotham is
weeks later.
Gotham's putting up bat signals as tribute to the fallen Batman.
Alfred is still recovering from having his hand chopped off, and in the end, we find out that Bruce left a little note for Alfred. And she says that it's cryptic. It's nothing much. She hands it to Alfred, um, and Alfred says it he. So Julia says, "See what I mean? It's cryptic." He goes, "Yes, I do. It means he was flawed." Julia says, "Flawed." Alfred says he never liked to look at his own death, Julia. He only thought of preventing it. But the last few days, I know he had to look at it many times in many ways. My hope was, and always has been, that somehow seeing it, understanding it, would lead him to find a way out. I've always known he'd never quit, but perhaps at least, like you said, he might find some greater prevention, some escape. But that's foolish, and it's why he was wrong to tempt Batman with a happy ending. It's what he never really understood about Batman, with his offers of immortality and transcendence. It's the thing that Bruce knew to be true about Batman, more than anything else. The thing we all know deep down but don't like to admit. That the story of Batman is and always will be a tragedy. Bruce would never let it be anything else. Batman could live forever. He could escape, but he doesn't. Doesn't. He dies, just like every one of us, even though he doesn't have to. That's his flaw. But it's also his greatest strength, the very thing that makes him immortal. He says, "We're in this together." He says, "Live bravely in the time you have and smile at the void." That's why the note says what it does. Why it's only one word. Why Batman's last message is and always will be, ha.
And we see the armor from the Gotham Theater at the beginning being taken to the dumpster. And that's where it ends.
That's it. That is the probably I think the best portrayal of Bruce Wayne's death I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the only one that I've really seen. Well, yeah, the only one that I've really seen. Um, and it just kind of hits.
Yeah, it goes hard. I gotta
I,
know though, since you know Bruce comes back, how do you think they do that?
I feel like a Lazarus Pit would be too easy.
Mm.
Like, it just feels too easy. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Damien has something to do with it in the
Mm.
end, being pissed that his father can't survive.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's something interesting. What I think is also especially interesting is that his death only lasted for basically like what 10 issues total.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, well,
Because
you'll see. You'll see.
well, because I imagine at the end of the next arc, Bruce is back as Batman.
That
And
is
that's
fair to
how
say.
that's how we end the Scott Snyder run.
Hmm.
But it feels like this is the ending, and what comes next is just going to be the epilogue.
Hmm.
Like, not the volume called epilogue, because that's literally just the last couple of issues that we couldn't collect into a story arc.
Hmm.
Which,
I think you'll be a little surprised by what we actually do get in the end.
yeah, that's what's going to be fascinating, because
Hmm.
I don't know really what I don't know what the next Batman arc for the Snyder run entails, other than Jim Gordon becoming Batman.
Yeah. Hmm.
I I hope we get at least a little bit of fallout from the Bat family themselves, at least a little, just because this feels like essentially the even though it's technically not the first time Bruce has died, it almost feels like it, just because we're in the New 52 and this is a still technically a brand new universe that
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily have all the continuity that it
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
did.
Definitely. Hmm.
Um, and what I've especially liked about Endgame is that it Snyder always seems to have something to actually say with his stories,
Yeah. Oh
uh,
yeah. Definitely.
and it hits. Like, and I am just a little conflicted because it feels so much like this should be where the story ends. This should be the end of it. But also, I still want to know what happens next.
And you will very much find out. And it's still written by Scott Snyder. It's still drawn by
Yes,
Greg Capullo. It's all there, and we will cover that someday in the future.
in the future, I will probably sooner rather than later, um, based on knowing that there'll be a Batman block eventually that'll have it in it.
Indeed,
Um,
indeed.
Indeed, but it's yeah, it hit. And I think the best way to put it is that Endgame hits harder in Death of the Family, at least for me, because it's an extension of Death of the Family,
Hmm.
and it's taking these threads and essentially tying them up into one thesis, really trying to explain, just because there's been a lot of recurring images between them both. There's the fly, um, that we've seen quite a bit of. Even in this one, there was quite a bit of owl imagery even before the Court of Owls showed up.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
definitely.
there's the idea of just ha as just sort of this word that keeps popping up,
Hmm.
uh, and sort of how it takes it and what it means to be Batman, as well as Gotham City as a character, because Gotham is definitely a character in this run.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I do want to know, even though I already know the answer to this, um, what is your full ranking of the Scott Snyder Batman arcs you've read?
so okay, at the bottom, Graveyard Shift. It's not bad. It's just mainly tie-ins to other things, but some very good character work. Snyder is just a master of character work, and so is James Tynion the fourth, who writes some of the issues
Yeah. Oh,
in
he's
that
great.
one.
Yeah, he really is.
Um, and then Death of the Family,
Yikes.
which I know that that's your favorite. So,
It
but
is.
okay,
It is. So it does hurt a little bit when you say
other
that,
than
but
other
but
than
no, knowing
Graveyard
that you do
Shift,
still think they're all like perfect stories. Like
they're
I'm
all
fine with
perfect.
that.
It's
Yeah.
like at the ranking at this point, it's mainly personal preference.
Yeah.
Except for Graveyard Shift. That's the only one that doesn't get like a perfect 10 out of 10. That gets like
Yeah.
an 8 because it's kind of mixed, but
Yeah.
that's a different thing. And then Endgame, because just that perfect extension of Death makes it edge it out just a little bit.
Mhm.
Then still Court of Owls and City of Owls, and then at the top still Zero Year.
Fair enough. I'm interested by the fact that you still think Zero Year is the best.
I do, but it's also just this. Everything in this is one. Also, really works really well as one big picture,
Hmm.
like as one big story. Um, so yeah, there's the arcs, but the arcs are very much chapters in a bigger story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
which I think is just Snyder does that wonderfully.
Yeah.
It's great. It's amazing, and I think I'm I really hope he sticks the landing.
I,
Um,
in my opinion, he very much does. But we
yeah,
shall see. We shall
we
see.
shall see.
In the
Uh,
meantime, we have some other things to read.
we do.
All right. So before we go into your guesses, if you have any left at this point, what Jacob knew about the this next 2 episode block coming up ahead of time is that it's a series very near and dear to my heart. It is not a continuation of something we've read before, and I have most of it in single issues because I love it that much.
So, and I should
It
say,
it is
audience.
readily available in trade, but I love having it in single issues. Um,
Okay.
I do also have it in trade because I love it that much. But
Okay. Well, if I can just say how my thought process was, Joey had said it's something new, so I'm like, okay, there are a couple things because he didn't immediately tell me he had it in single issues. So my initial guess was, oddly enough, that we've done a lot of DC. Maybe we'll start doing some Vertigo stuff.
okay.
Like that was my initial thought, and that's why I
Mhm.
thought, well, if we're going to do Vertigo, we're probably going to start where it all began with Alan Moore Swamp Thing. It's not Alan Moore Swamp Thing.
It is not.
And I thought, well, he has it in single issues, and I know
And
he
I
loves.
swear I've mentioned this before, what it is to you, but I guess you didn't remember.
I don't. So then my second guess was maybe Constantine, and that got shot down. So my third guess, because it's the only hero we haven't covered something Green Arrow related. I don't
You're
know.
wrong about that as well.
Okay, what are we
Um,
covering?
okay, so I guess I haven't talked about this enough. I will rectify that immediately. Let's dive back into the 80s, shall we?
Okay.
Right around the same era as George Perez's Wonder Woman. Next time on Fresh Face Comics, we will be reading the very first Suicide Squad series.
Oh, oh,
um,
okay. Oh,
so my
hello.
thought process for this going in is, we've done all the big six heroes. We've done Justice League. We've done Teen Titans. As far as team books go, I'd like another team book in there, and this is one of my absolute favorites.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So,
we're gonna read John Ostrander's Suicide Squad.
so the only thing I know about John Ostrander is that Big Finish tapped him to write a Seventh Doctor audio with Ace and Hex, and it fell through.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Wow,
they were gonna. It was gonna be set in the Wild West. I want them to do that as like a lost story.
I would
Somebody
love that.
revive this thing. But
Right?
like, wait. Does Steven
Okay.
have to watch one? Is there gonna be adapted material?
Not for these particular stories, but if you want to watch them, watch the movies, you can. Because there are two of them if we did one for each volume. So next episode will be the volume one, Trial by Fire, um, and uh, and then episode 33 will be the second volume, The Nightshade Odyssey.
Okay, okay. That I sorry. I'm not expecting this.
I love that. I love that this was apparently so out of left field for you. When like I swear I've mentioned that I
You
have like
mentioned you love the Suicide Squad, but my brain, when you said you had it in single issues, like, okay, so it's got to be like modern, right?
no, no.
No,
This is an
no.
80s series that I love so much
Are we?
that
We're
I
still
that
post
I that
crisis,
I that I
correct?
used to like go to my comic shop, and one of the first things that I ever tried to do was try to get all the John Ostrander issues from like these big cardboard boxes that he had most of them in. Somewhere in the Ostrander run, somewhere in like the 20s of issues, is the first appearance of Oracle as a character, and I have that in single issues.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, you're
like
right.
you have no idea. Like I love the Suicide Squad so much.
Okay,
Yeah, so there's that. Yeah, I just sent you both links to the first 2 volumes,
okay, okay. This is gonna be.
and these will be our first 2 episodes of the year
Yes,
of
yes,
the
they
new year.
will
It's
be.
2023. So 2023 starting on something completely new, something completely accessible. So yeah, it's very exciting, and I'm really excited to talk about these. So yeah,
So okay, yeah,
I think I might do my rereads in the single issues.
that would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah, so that about does that.
yeah. So
In the meantime, before that comes out, be sure to follow us on Twitter. I am at Jomo with 3 underscores. He is at Newt5996. I will leave all that linked in the description below. As always, you can buy the book that we covered in this podcast and the book we'll be covering on the next podcast down in the description below. I'll leave Amazon links down there if you want to go check those out and read along with us. It is always appreciated.
Please
Yeah.
remember to follow us on your preferred podcast platform.
Yes, we're
Leave
on
us
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, YouTube, wherever you want to listen to us.
Yes.
I hope you're liking the new format and the new theme song for all these episodes. It's been
Yes.
pretty great.
Leave us a rating and review if you're on a podcast platform. Leave us some comments if you're on YouTube. Let us know what you think. Subscribe to Blood Donut Studios for other sort of media reviews. Joey's been watching Star Trek for the first time.
Indeed, with my brother. Yeah, it's been great. And we're also starting up a new series with my friend Brian this month sometime. I'm not sure exactly when. I just know it's starting up this month. So
So
you'll see that.
wait, isn't it coming in January?
Yeah, January. That's why I said this month because
This is still up.
this episode comes out in January, Jacob.
No,
Oh
this
wait.
comes out
Oh
in
no, no, it
December
doesn't.
still.
Doesn't. God damn it! Wow, I am so far ahead. Whew.
Yeah.
Next
Next
month, new
month.
series starts.
Next month, new series. Thank goodness
Oh.
I have a sense of time.
It's been a long day. Shut up.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, I am shocked.
Yes.
To quote the great Jason Todd, goodness gracious, I've been bamboozled.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, this has been Joey Morgan.
And Jacob Licklider.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.